Chapter 12 of Mental Fascination. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. The Dangers of Psychism. In the preceding chapters I have gone into the subject of the rationale of mesmerism, for the purpose of pointing out to you that the phenomena of mesmerism and hypnotism is not dependent upon sleep conditions, but may be readily produced by mental fascination, pure and simple, without any attempt to bring about the sleep which is publicly associated with the phenomena. I have not only pointed out the general principles underlying the subject, but have given in detail the technique and methods whereby the phenomena may be produced by any experimenter. The methods given therein are the ones in constant use in the leading psychological experimental laboratories of this and other countries, and the results mentioned may be duplicated by any person who will put into operation the principles mentioned. Why the information is imparted. But I wish to state that my primary object in imparting the said information was not that the students of the book must necessarily undertake a series of psychological experiments, but principally that they might understand the power and force of the mental principle known as mental fascination, and see its practical operation in all of its varied phases. I wish them to know the experiments in the psychological laboratory, the performance of the public mesmerist or hypnotist, and the use of mental influence in business and everyday life that we see in operation around us on all sides and at all times, are all phases of the same underlying principle. I wish to show them the oneness in essence of all these varying phases of operation of this great mental principle. Certain phases mentioned. There is one phase of mesmeric or hypnotic phenomena, however, that I have omitted. I shall call your attention to this briefly, that you may know that I have not overlooked the same, and also that you may recognize my reasons for not going into detail regarding this class of phenomena. I allude to the so-called higher phases of mesmeric or hypnotic phenomena, the various forms of the trance condition. The abnormal conditions. This trance phenomena, whether produced by mesmeric processes or by other means, are abnormal, unhealthy, and undesirable phases of mental condition. I cannot speak too strongly against the encouragement of, and instruction in the development, I had almost said the development, of these abnormal states, either by self-practice or by means of hypnotic or mesmeric practices. It is high time that someone should call the attention of the public to the dangers of this so-called psychism. I know positively that this psychism is not the desirable thing that it is supposed to be. I know also that it is very far from true occult development. This psychism, when compared with true occultism, is but as the baleful glare of the moon, as contrasted with the bright, warm, life-giving rays of the sun. This false occultism, which is not occultism at all, but is merely psychism, has deluded many into its fold, and has led its followers on to plains which are akin to mental quagmires and swamps, following the ignis fatuus, or will-o'-the-wisp of psychism. The antiquity of the practices. Nearly all races of men have discovered that there are means possible to people whereby they may produce in themselves abnormal conditions known as the trance, and men from the dim past to the present time have seen fit to indulge in these deplorable practices. The means by which these states are obtained are various, the favorite methods being the gazing at a bright object, of fixing the gaze at the root of the nose, staring at the umbilicus, staring at a drop of ink, inhaling vapors, listening to weird music, etc., etc. Much mock occultism, which is really psychism, depends upon these methods for its results, manifestations, and phenomena. The Hindu fakirs and the Arab dervishes indulge freely in these methods and produce results which, while highly esteemed by themselves, are viewed with disgust, horror, and repulsion by true occultists of all lands, including, of course, the real Hindu yogis, the Persian Sufis, both of which last mentioned bodies of Oriental occultists regard these practices as harmful, and the phenomena resulting therefrom as bogus and misleading. Western fallacies. And much of the latter-day Western psychism is also based upon the same practices, and brings about like results. In this connection, I would say that some of the practices adopted by some of the New Thought people belong to this class. I have seen methods advised for going into the silence, in which the student is advised to focus his gaze on the root of his nose, etc., which is the identical method used by Braid to produce hypnotic conditions, and which is also used by the Hindu fakirs to produce trance conditions. Is it not time that the truth regarding these things should be known? Low states, not high conditions. These self-induced abnormal conditions may also be produced by hypnotic methods, by leading the subject into the deeper stages, which some authorities speak of as if they were highly spiritual, but which are nothing more than the miserable, abnormal, deplorable trance conditions just referred to. These conditions may be produced by hypnotic methods simply because any mental state may be so produced, and not because of any mystic process, or knowledge, or connection. Let us take another hasty glance at the so-called sleep conditions of hypnotism, that we may get a clear idea of the subject. The sleep delusion. In the first place, there is no real sleep condition. Let us say why this is. Well, to start from a beginning, much of the sleep does not exist at all. In some cases, the subject merely acquiesces in the suggestion that he is asleep, and then he acts out the suggestion, just as he would act out any suggestion. He plays out his part, that's all. This phase is far more common than the majority of students of hypnotism are aware of. They hear the subject say that he was asleep, and did not remember a thing that was said to him, or what he did. But all of this is merely in the line of acquiescence and playing the part, which fact has been positively proven by advanced experimenters. But there are other stages of sleep. The next in order is the daydream stage, which I have described as the playing bear phase. Even this is not true sleep, but a condition resembling a daydream. It is in this stage that the majority of instances of hypnotic phenomena are produced. Sometimes the daydream becomes very deep, and the trance condition is almost reached, but still it is not sleep, as the word is generally used. Hypnotic trances deplored. Next in order come the several stages of the condition which hypnotists speak of as deep sleep conditions, but which I state positively are nothing more or less than the well-known trance conditions into which people of all nations and times have plunged themselves by the methods before mentioned. The only difference is that the operator induces the condition by mental influence and suggestion, just as he would induce any other mental state, instead of the subject inducing it in himself. It is the same old abnormal, harmful practice in another guise, and anything that is said against the self-induced condition is equally applicable to the operator-induced one. They are the same thing. Well-meaning practices. I shall not describe the conditions at further length, nor shall I give any instruction in the production of them. I consider them essentially harmful, and my object in speaking of them here is to warn off and caution anyone from allowing themselves to be placed in this condition by experimenters. The practice is weakening to the will, for the reason that it depends upon tiring out the will by straining the eyes or other organs of sense. Practitioners of mental influence in all ages have recognized this fact, and have employed objects calculated to tire out the will. Bright objects to stare at and thus tire out the sense of sight have been employed. Monotonous sounds ending in are used in the Orientals to tire out the sense of hearing by its monotonous and soothing sound. Vapors and perfumes and incense are used to overcome the sense of smell, all tending to tire out the will and to reduce it to a passive, non-resisting stage. Then, when the will has been rendered passive or tired, the mind becomes receptive and impressionable, and in extreme cases becomes as wax in the hands of the operator. Remember these things, students, and you will see this principle called into operation many times, in unexpected places. Beware of the methods that tend to drug the will. Psychism like a poisonous cobra. Let me urge upon you to avoid psychism. Put it away from you as you would a poisonous cobra, for it seeks to strike at the heart of your will, and would thus paralyze your mentality. Beware of all that tends to make you weak. Beware of the claims of soul development or spiritual unfoldment that are accompanied by these methods, for they are but psychism masquerading as occultism or spiritual philosophy. Remember my test. Does this make me strong? Apply the touchstone, and then govern yourself accordingly. This is a word to the wise. Heed it. The proof. Concluding this part of the subject, I would say that if any of you are disposed to question the correctness of my above statement, then you have but to examine the types of psychics seen on all sides. Are they not all hyper-impressionable, excessively sensitive, neurotic, hysterical, passive, negative people? Do they not become as mere psychic harps upon which the passing mental breezes play, producing weird sounds? Remember now, I am speaking of genuine psychics, not the bogus psychics who are out for the money, and who are a shrewd, cunning lot, far from being impressionable, and in reality using their mesmeric power to impress and influence the credulous persons coming under their influence. I am not alluding to these people, but to the poor, frail-willed, negative sensitives, who are as impressionable as the photographer's negative, and to whom also the development means but the bringing out of impressions from outside. I pray you, be a human positive, not a human negative. End of chapter 12.